Okay, I think we're on here. So, we talked yesterday about the Great Railroad Strike and the sort of interesting irony of the fact that, you know, it, so as a quick recap, the Great Railroad Strike was approximately a 7 week, uh, very violent series of strikes that had started with B&O railroad workers in West Virginia and eventually spread across multiple states and required the U.S. Army to actually intervene to put down the strike and end the difficulties that were going on. There's a couple of great ironies to the Great Railroad Strike. Irony number one is that the unions were blamed for the violence and held responsible, when in actuality, there was not even a union involved. That the railroad workers weren't in a union, they simply went out on strike. And the aspect of it that was violent and problematic was really supported by anarchists and socialists. Irony number two is that when the strike was over, the B&O and its workers sat down and through the process that we now call collective bargaining, reached an agreement that they could have done well before the strike happened and saved themselves millions of dollars in damage and lost lives and business opportunities and everything else. The 1880s, largely as a response to things like the Great Railroad Strike, saw a big increase in like business activities that were aimed directly at labor and in sort of like slowing down, for lack of a better term, maybe, or reining in labor. One is private security. So there was a company, the Pinkerton Detective Agency, that specialized in providing basically private police forces for businesses. They also worked on breaking up unions. They would infiltrate them secretly and then sabotage them from within. Blacklists. These, which are, by the way, blacklists are highly illegal. They are lists of union members that were shared among employers, and employers all agreed that they would hire nobody on that list, thus keeping union members out of work. Strike breakers. These are replacement workers. They were just brought in to substitute for the workers that were gone. Generally speaking, they were minorities or immigrants, or exceptionally poor individuals, but usually minorities or immigrants, who were willing to work at lower wages than the current workers were because they just desperately wanted jobs. Conspiracy laws. Court injunctions, we read about this in our textbook, which were court orders passed against union activities, as well as the use of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which basically outlined the concept that unions were monopolies. These were employed by businesses in an effort to slow down and restrict the growth of unions. The great irony of all of these things being done is that while there was this huge panic that unions were part of this vast conspiracy, Illuminati confirmed, that was trying to overthrow America, that conspiracy really wasn't what the unions were about. But the more that these things were done, like the Pinkertons and the use of blacklists and strike breaker replacement workers and conspiracy laws, the more that Marxists and socialists and anarchists were able to gain support by saying, look, we tried telling you this is the way that it is, and now they're just proving it to you. It's been this way all along, but now you see that we were actually right. There is no better example, probably, of the profound influence that Marxist anarchists had on labor than on a single incident, the Haymarket Riot of 1886. Now, unlike the Great Railroad Strike, the Haymarket Riot is literally like a one-day event. And it was only a few hours. But the the way that this impacted labor and the perception of labor was exceptionally deep and profound. So let's do a little bit of background here. For whatever strange reason, May is regarded as the International Worker Month. And the 1st of May, called May Day, is the International Worker Holiday. I don't know why it got developed that way, but it did. So in May of 1886, early May, the AFL decides that it is going to call for a nationwide 1 day strike. And it's not going to just be AFL unions going on strike. They contact other unions as well. And they ask that all working people in a union for that 1 day go out on strike. The idea is to sort of cripple the economy and show what would happen if, for a prolonged period, these industries went out. The goal of all of this was to get an 8-hour workday. Now, the problem with setting up something like this is that anarchists are going to hear about it too. And they see an opportunity, and boy, do they intend on taking advantage of that opportunity. So we'll pick this up tomorrow with lesson 7B on this one, because we had the paper we corrected today. So peace and love.